Hi, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and Conversation through the power of our story. I would like to introduce you guys to Vance Row. A little bit about Vance. In November of 2019, he discovered that a yoga practice is a powerful community of connection and challenges. Through his regular practice, Vance has found an incredible amount of physical and mental benefits, including making him a far calmer person. At that time, Vance was struggling with his own mental health issues, which included a toxic work environment, career ending injury, and poor coping mechanisms like abusing alcohol. Prior to becoming a yoga teacher, Vance was a police officer for more than 20 years and worked for both Ocean City, Maryland Police and Salisbury, Maryland Police during his law enforcement career. After seeing the physical and mental benefits yoga provided for Vance, he decided he wanted to teach yoga to other first responders and public safety professionals. Vance completed his 200-hour yoga teacher training through Yoga Vibes in Ocean City, Maryland in March of 2021. Throughout his training, Vance was mentored in the Hatha Yoga tradition by Tana Martin. Since that time, he has also completed Warriors at Ease training, aerial yoga teacher training, and Veterans Yoga Project Mindful Resilience. Most recently, Vance has begun his 300-hour YTT through Guiding Wellness Institute. Ultimately, his story shows the power of yoga and resilience and why Vance wants to use yoga to combat first responder and military suicide. In November 2021, Vance founded Yoga Rescue as a way to do so. Through yoga classes, Vance blends a practice mixed with breath, movement, and mindfulness for an overall feeling of well being. During these sessions, students can expect to move, stretch, work of alignment, build strength, and nurture flexibility. He believes that the practice of yoga is really for anyone and makes his classes fun and accessible at any level. Thank you, Vince, for joining us.
Okay,
What
thanks.
a bio.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
can you tell us a little bit more about your career and how it ended up leading you to the yoga?
Sure can. So I actually started in my police department when I was 19 years old. And this is in the summers when I was still in college. So I would go down and I would work at the beach in this busy resort town in Ocean City for the summertime, and then I would go back to college every fall. And I kept doing that all through my college career. I ended up I worked for Salisbury City for about a year and a half. I went through the police academy and then I worked about a year with them. And that's about 30 miles away from Ocean City. But the goal had always been to come back and be an Ocean City cop. Um, so in my career, uh, so I was in Ocean City for about 20 years, and I did the typical patrol stuff that everybody answer calls, make arrests, go to court. But the other stuff that I did a lot of admin work, especially in the winter times because of where I work. We usually have to hire a lot of summer help, just like I started out, and we do that at college classrooms. So I was responsible for putting together recruiting presentations and actually going and doing those presentations, doing backgrounds, doing training. So just a little bit different than what everybody thinks of when they think of like typical cop. What I later did in my career is I was our first polygraph examiner. And as a result, so I went to 12 weeks of training to do that. I built our polygraph program, writing the policies, the forms, and then that's how I spent the last 8 years of my career. Um, so that's kind of like a little bit of an overview of my career, but what I kind of want to touch on is where I got from, like my police career and where it maybe kind of went a little sideways. So and maybe some lessons learned for everybody else. So the first thing is that I want to just kind of tell you about is because of where I work, because we're a resort town, incredibly busy from like May to October. And that's just because there's a lot more people in our town and there's a lot more special events. That means that the cops have to work a lot more hours. I don't know any better. So I would work 5 and 6 days a week. And we typically in the wintertime schedule work 4 10-hour days, but in the summertime we'd work 5 to 6. And so it just started to compile. Early in my career, I was, listen, I'll work every day. You don't even have to give me a day off. But you start to see as you get into your career, like you're losing friendships because people don't ask you to do anything anymore because you're always busy. So they just stop asking. Um, so some friendships just kind of fell away because of that. Uh, I started to really feel like I wasn't doing much other than work, unfortunately. Uh, so as I kind of transitioned from that patrol work in the summertime, and then I went into the polygraph world, what happened was because I was by myself, I was the only operator at the time. I was doing those 50 and 60-hour work weeks for about 9 months a year. And it just became an incredible amount. Like I just didn't do anything but work. Never really felt like I was off. And so that so that's like part one. Part two, there's going to be a couple parts. Um, I did not have a very good relationship with my boss at the time, and it was incredibly contentious. So when I say toxic work environment, that's what I mean. It was one guy that was just giving me a lot of fits. Uh, if you add in next part, which is everybody has taken a lot of people in law enforcement have taken a polygraph at some point. Most people will tell you some horror stories. They'll be like, I had this one polygraph examiner that was awful to me. And I'm not that guy, I promise. But uh, what I want to share from my end is a lot of people were coming in and were telling me some pretty awful things that either happened to them or that they happened to do to somebody else. And what I always say is, listen, do people say disgusting things about, something that they did with like a family pet? Yes. Is that a little funny? Yes. That's not the stuff that affected me. The stuff that affected me was when people were doing things to other people. And I started to internalize a lot of that. Um, and then on top of all this, then I got hurt. And so I was working all these crazy hours. And then I actually have what became a career ending injury. And what happened to me was in late 2016, I fell off my police bike when I was working and it tore up my knee. And as a result of that injury, I now have nerve damage and it makes my left foot burn all the time. Which, listen, I wore flip flops a lot when I was when I was off anyway. So, uh, it's not a big deal if I'm just wearing bare feet or flip flops all the time. One of the things that I really started to lean into as that injury just didn't go away because they kept trying to do different therapies and different things because they said, look, that's going to go away, or we're going to be able to give you enough medicine that it's finally going to right itself, and it didn't. Um, for a very long time. When I was in college, when I was early on the job in law enforcement, the one thing we did to blow up steam was drink, and that's what I really started to do. And because drinking was always a good time. Well, what I'm going to share is it's a good time until it isn't. And it had gotten to be this point in my life that I was like blackout drunk 3 and 4 nights a week. And I, when I look back on it, I'm a different person than I am right now. But at the time, I was just like this tortured soul, and I didn't really know where to go, didn't know what to do with it. Uh, there's a point in there for probably a year and a half or so that I was having thoughts of suicide. It had actually gotten to the point where I had a plan of what I was going to do. I didn't have a date picked out yet, but I knew exactly how I was going to do it. And then we had a police officer that I used to work with in Salisbury City, um, who killed himself, and he was 27 years old when he did that, and that scared me enough to finally tell my wife that listen, there's something wrong with me. I don't know what to do with it, and I definitely need help. So we go to my family care doctor. That's the only people that knew at the time. It was my wife and my doctor. Uh, we certainly uh, modified my medication. Um, I wasn't totally honest about the amount of alcohol I was drinking at the time. Uh, and it's not for a couple months after that fact, after that this conversation that happens, that my wife actually takes videos of me after a really good weekend of drinking for me, and she shows them to me the next day, and she's like, "Hey, we got to talk because this is out of control." And look, I'll tell anybody, my I did not in my mind say, "Well, I'm never drinking again." In my mind, I just said, I don't want to ever have this conversation again. So I'm just not going to drink for the next 24 hours. Uh, and what has happened is that 24-hour period has just repeated itself now for 4+ years. And I just, that was the last day I drank was when she took the videos of me. And she might actually still have those on her phone somewhere, but I don't really want to see them again. Uh, so within a couple days of that, so here's where the yoga starts to come in. So I had done yoga in my life before, and I had done it. If any of you are familiar with Beachbody, and if any of you have ever seen P90X, um, it is not relaxing. It is not very zen, and it kicked my ass. And that was the first yoga I ever did. And if you asked me, it, like later in life, are you going to be a yoga teacher? I'm like, and do that? Absolutely not. All right, so I had never been into a yoga studio before, but I had practiced before. And then I can't explain it other than it found me, because there's this day that's within a couple days of when Amy tells me, "Hey, you got to get this drinking under control." I just go for the first time, and it's an incredible experience. And within, I think I probably went like 3 or 4 times a week now for the next, maybe over the next month. And it's within the first 30 days that I told her that I was going to teach this to people like me. I didn't think that I would get a bunch of people. I didn't think I'd ever get a bunch of cops to come along with me to a hot studio, which, listen, I happened to go to a hot studio for the first time. And if you've ever spent any amount of time with me, I sweat incredibly easily. So, I look like a puddle after 60 minutes. But there's something very freeing about it. There's something that really allowed my mind to empty out and get rid of all these negative emotions. And I finally could process some of the things that had gone on in my life up until that point. And it wasn't until like later on that I start to understand why it worked. I just knew it did. And I just knew I was going to keep coming back. So I enrolled in the 200 program, which about as fast as I could. Which it didn't come around until the next September. So I enrolled into that one. Um, and then I've just kind of picked up different trainings as I've been going along. So Warriors at Ease and Veterans Yoga Project, those are both uh, programs that are designed for military, like combat veterans that are struggling with PTSD. It's similar to the crowd that I want to work with. So those things are very translatable. The 300-hour program I'm attending right now is a therapeutic yoga. So it's using it kind of in a therapeutic way, not necessarily just teaching poses and things like that, but actually maybe trying to treat specific ailments and using yoga in that way. Uh, so I'm just trying to pick up kind of everything I want to do at this point. When I got into it, I said I really wanted to teach folks that were just like me. So my goal has changed slightly. The reason that I'm doing a 300-hour program is if I combine 200 and 300 for a total of 500, I can now write my own 200-hour program, and I can take somebody like me and teach them how to teach yoga. So I think that's what I want to do next. I don't have a business plan per se, but I'm just kind of, I pick up trainings here and there. I try to meet other people that are like me, that are, in the public safety world, that are maybe teaching yoga. Um, just kind of see where it goes from there. It's been an interesting road for sure. I don't want anybody to struggle the way that I did. So what I will what has come of this is I teach a couple studio classes every week. and then I teach a couple private ones, and I do some stuff on YouTube. Uh, the other interesting stuff that's kind of come from this is, so for me to stop drinking, it was really, uh, I didn't do any 12-step programs. Um, I leaned on some friends that I knew had stopped drinking at some point in their life. And what has come to be now is we actually have a first responder recovery group, and we meet twice a month. And it's cops, firefighters, dispatchers, death investigators, you know, everybody through every different career field in the public safety world, and we all get together twice a month. And the more people that hear about it, they're like, can I come to that? Sure. And listen, if you don't happen to live in our area on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, then my God, we'll send you a Zoom link. But we meet the first and third Wednesday of every month, and it's just there's no real structure to it other than we welcome people that are either in recovery, are struggling currently with drug, alcohol use, anything like that, or the people that we call sober curious, like they're, hey, what's it like to not drink? So we just try to be a supportive environment, a safe place that maybe they can talk about some stuff. And the crazy part to me, so at my worst, I think that I am all by myself, that I am damaged, that I nobody can love me, and I am so far gone. And then we go around the table and we all start to share. And all these people, guys and girls, as we go around the table, are saying things that I don't say to other people. They're saying things that were only ever in my head. And it just that's where the community really grows, that, we're all just kind of like, me too, me too. So that's kind of where I got to at this point. And like I said, I don't know where that goes. I mean, there is a thought in the back of my mind that uh, perhaps going and getting a degree and doing substance counseling. But I really only want to work with first responders. Uh, just, I want to help the people that are like me. I mean, I've been in and around public safety since I was 19 years old. So what I will share is, just because my career path kind of took a veer. Um, so about a year and a half ago, because I can't be a police officer anymore, my town decided to offer me a different job, and that was in our dispatch center. So I became a police and fire dispatcher about a year and a half ago, but I can retire in a year, a little over a year. So June 1st of 25 is when I actually hit my 25 years, and I can retire. I can stay longer if I like. Um, but it's been a pretty great place to land. The folks are incredibly supportive. It's actually, I look forward to going to work for the first time in 10 years, which is what I told my boss when I first got there, who is a retired police officer himself. So it's nice. I was not going to work with a smile for the last couple years of my police career, for sure. They were just challenging times. I'm glad to be certainly on this side, and being able to talk about it. And look, I said this before we started the recording. In the beginning, to talk about this stuff was not easy, and I would lose it every once in a while. Every time I get the opportunity to do it, I get a little bit stronger. And I certainly know that there are far more people that are like me, that are hurting and that are struggling with drug, alcohol, mental health, any of that stuff. And if I can be some sort of resource, I will be. So certainly, I don't care. Publish my phone number, email, uh, Instagram, whatever. I mean, if I can be of help to somebody else, it is my absolute pleasure. Uh, what I've done in the last year is, I don't know how familiar you are with Copline. It is a wonderful resource, a crisis hotline for active and retired police officers. So I had first met these folks when I was in Nashville at a FOP wellness conference. And at the time, I was still a police officer. And I was like, oh, tell me about this. So they do. And I don't really. I didn't really think much about it other than, oh, you have to not be in law enforcement in order to get into cop line. Uh, we had a on Maryland's Eastern Shore, we had a police officer kill himself a little over a year ago. And it was that moment that I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And I feel like yoga can't be my only thing. So I just want to, I'll help in any arena that I can be. So I signed up. And the director actually called me 15 minutes after I submitted my application, and I thought it was a test because my phone rang 15 minutes later, and it's like 9:30 at night at this point. And I asked her that. I said, "Hey, is this a test? Like, hey, am I going to answer my phone if somebody calls?" And she goes, "No, that's a pretty good that's a pretty good one." So I went to my it's a 40-hour training class. I went to Texas in May to do that, and I've been volunteering for that ever since. So 2 shifts a month. That's what our requirement is, but you can certainly do more than that if you want. But I think it's a wonderful resource. I talk about it anytime I can. So it's very easy. 1-800 Cop Line, or you can actually just look it up online, Cop Line.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I love that you were able to fight through the vulnerability and all of the negative feelings that come with everything that clouds over and prevents us from sharing our stories. So thank you for that, because I think it's a great story that a lot of people can relate to. I did want to ask you, because it
Shoot.
sounds like almost like the perfect storm when you talk about the toxic work environment, the injury. It just everything just came together to luckily bring you on this amazing path for the yoga and everything that you're doing now. But if you could go back and talk to your younger self, is there any advice you would give to yourself?
So, you know, I think if I could go back and talk to myself a little while ago, it would be to take better care of yourself. Um, Early on in the career, it was, I didn't matter. It didn't matter if I slept. If I got 3 hours, that was plenty. And just so you can go right back to work and just keep cranking along. I didn't do anything that wasn't outside of work. So I think everybody has to have a hobby, and everybody needs to have a thing. And look, yoga is my thing. I don't make a secret of it. And I'm not saying everybody's got to do yoga. I'm saying you got to do something that ain't your job, because your job is not your purpose. Your job is not, and I say that because I was that guy. And not only did I do it on the clock, but then when I was off, I would volunteer for like every FOP event. And I was on the executive board for 10 plus years. So my off time was spent doing work. Now, my wife has been incredibly supportive from the get go. We have now been married for, it'll be 20 years in April. And she was always, yes, I understand, go, as long as we get a little bit of time. And that's, we would make the absolute best of it. When I was working all those crazy hours where I'd work 5 and 6 days a week, she would come and meet me just so we could have dinner, just so we'd actually see each other. And we weren't just like two cars passing along the highway. Uh, so, I mean, we always just made it work, whatever it was. When I first get promoted to a supervisor position and I'm off in the middle of the week, because you got to work the weekends in a resort town. So I'd be off like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night. We'd laugh, we'd call it the new weekend, and we would just make it work. Um, I think you have to have, so take better care of yourself. So sleep better. I want to say eat better, but I won't do it. I won't. I want to eat cake and I want to eat ice cream. And I'm just gonna, I don't, I'm never gonna be skinny. um, but I would prioritize sleep much earlier in my career. I didn't start doing that until uh probably a couple years ago. I mean, like long after the alcohol, long after the mental health stuff. Like I actually have an alarm that goes off on my phone that tells me like, hey, you're getting close to bedtime, like start winding down. And I get up super early because I'm one of those people. And I get up super early, I work out, and then I then I walk the dogs, and then I go to work because I can't do it at night. I won't do it. I just won't do it. I'll come up with any other reason not to. Uh, and yeah, I don't know if I said this or not. Have friends outside of your job. So have friends that aren't cops, have friends that aren't in the fire service, have friends that are just have friends that have some other thing. So I was fortunate. My wife has nothing to do with law enforcement. Uh, she was in the business world for 24 years. And when we would say like very early in our career, hey, let's go, we're gonna go to the bar. It's Tuesday night. And she'd be like, why do you all go out on Tuesday nights? Because that's when we're off. We're off in the middle of the week. Uh, so again, new weekend. But she was the only one that had like real, we would call it like real people hours because she would actually work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. All the rest of us would work shift work or nights or something, just had weird schedules. Uh, so yeah, there's that. So I actually go and talk about self-care now. That's one of the classes that I teach. So I talk about my story, and I want to mention for a second, and I don't know. So when I talk about my story, I actually call it a storm. I call like that because a lot of times when something I equate it to actually being on a boat out in the water that like maybe the seas get a little rough and then the winds start to go sideways and then all of a sudden like rain's going sideways and there's lightning and thunder. That's what it felt like. And it's only looking back on it that I actually can see how bad it is. Because in the moment I didn't understand how bad it was. To the point where I actually have a tattoo on my back that's it's a clipper ship and it's one side is like stormy seas and then the other side is like calm and the sun's coming up and stuff like that, and that signifies what I just told you about. That's that I have that uh back there commemorating that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I guess my other question for you would be, I don't know what the timeline was, how big your break was before you got brought on as a dispatcher, but it sounds like you were set up in the yoga and kind of had a little more self-care. Do you think that played a role in why the work environment feels so much happier for you now as a doing the dispatching?
I will I think that I make a far more priority of myself. um and not I don't want to sound selfish, but a lot of times in my life I would always put somebody else ahead of me, and there gets to be a point that that's just too much, and you have to fill your own cup first if you're gonna ever help somebody else. And I know that that doesn't, the first time you hear that you're just like, oh, that guy's selfish, until you're in this part where like you're literally burning at both ends and you have nothing, and then someone's like, well, this happened, and you're like, well, I have nothing to give, so what am I going to do about it? So I think when you start taking care of yourself, I mean, there's a couple things that like are non-negotiable to me. Like the sleep is a big one for me. Moving my body somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes a day, like have to do it. uh I eat, like I said, I eat as good as I can. It is not going to be perfect, and I am not eating like just lettuce. So um but yeah, these are just things, I'm not going to say that I do yoga every day. But I do something. Maybe that's just a walk, maybe that's a bike ride. When it's nice out in the summertime, I'll go paddle boarding, but just something that makes my heart rate go up and something where I move around. uh when I went into So we're allowed to work out while we're at work, and I have a yoga mat and I have blocks and everything, and I have them in a back room there. So look, if we're not busy, I'll look at my boss and be like, "Hey, I'm going to go back and work out for a little bit," and so I can go do an hour long yoga practice. And I mean, if we're busy, they can bang on the door, and I'll certainly come back. But hadn't happened yet.
That's great. I love that it sounds like that department is supportive. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
think that's
anybody that
awesome.
listen, we try to make it a priority that uh, folks, their mental their mental and physical wellness. And I didn't mention this before, but I would like to mention it now. Uh, so when I had been in my police department, when I was going through some of the worst times, um, I remember actually asking multiple times to be a part of the peer support team, and I was actually told no every single time, and I would just get pretty upset about it. And I was just like, why? You know, what possible reason would you have not to allow me to do it? Now, I wasn't. They didn't know what was going on with me, and I don't. I wasn't in a place that I was going to tell them, but I knew something was wrong. I can tell you that because I would hear. Uh, I heard someone talk once and do a mental health first aid class. That was the first time. That was in the spring of 16. And that was the first time that I was like, oh my God, we're supposed to take care of each other and we don't do this. uh, and at the time I was really kind of in the throes of it and I was mad all the time and I didn't understand why. And like the littlest thing would just set me off. And again, didn't understand why. And I would just go home and I would just drink as much as I could to try to make it go away. And that doesn't make it go away, which, you know, I know now, but I didn't know then. Uh, so when I actually transitioned from my police department job into my dispatch job, that was one thing that I asked my now uh, director and my communications manager. I'm like, hey, listen, I would really because of the things that I've been involved with, because of what I've now learning, what I'm, you know, I feel drawn to this. I would really like to be part of a peer support team. They looked at me and they were like, listen, we don't have anything like that. We probably should. So now you get to be in charge of it. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Be careful what you wish for, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. I do want to open it up for questions. I see Janet's
Sure,
got her hand up.
sure. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you say so much of what, what I believe in too. And I think that Michelle will agree with me. Our dispatch center wasn't like that.
No,
It was, it was like whatever they could do to push you, they did. And,
yeah.
you know, it was my boss that put me over the edge the first time after a car accident that put me off for a year. And it was crazy, but different things that you've mentioned is so powerful, especially you talk about you and your spouse, setting up time together. Um, my husband and I were married 10 years before I joined the force. And then I was working shift work and he was working days and raising two children. And the thing is that it got to the point we had to set a date with each other
Hmm.
because between the kids and us, and I'd phone him and I'd say, I have this day off. Can you take that day off? And we'd go on a date, spend the day together. We've been together for 52 years. And
That's
in
great.
that time, 51 of those years were in the police force,
Mm,
him first, and then both of us. So it's so important. And to have outside, he didn't have anything outside. And it was really tough when he left. It was always me, the spouse, that because I wasn't in the force in the beginning, would bring in those other people from outside. And I can't do hot yoga. I hear people talk about it. I don't perspire, so
that's not
it
a
would
that
just kill me to go in there. But anyways, I want to say thank you for everything that you've shared. And I could
definitely.
relate to a lot of it that you're talking about. And really, I think we need a couples talk sometime about how we
All right.
navigate. And I think that would be great. My husband and I
Yeah.
actually taught marriage prep classes for
Mm,
a while, just, and communications was the top of it. Not to say we're perfect, but at least we practiced.
right.
You
No,
teach
I
what you
agree.
need to learn, right?
And I think we learned on the fly. Neither one
Oh,
of us
yeah.
really neither really ever had relationships. And we met, I was 23 and she was 25. And we kind of learned it together. And the whole idea is that you keep growing together. And we would do the same thing. It would be
Mhm.
if because I always had like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off in the wintertime. Uh,
Mhm.
and like I would take a Sunday off here, or she would have like a holiday and she would take, so we would make it work, whatever that meant. Because
Mhm.
I can tell you that some of the worst arguments we ever had happened when we didn't see each other enough. And we would just kind of like get bitchy at each other.
Well, I was 18 and he was 25. And I can say that even though we're due to celebrate our 52nd wedding anniversary, we probably only lived together 25 years because of all the shift work and the
Probably
travel
true.
and stuff. So,
Probably true.
now with retired, it's a challenge to be together 24 hours a day. I don't do any housework.
You're
I
like,
used to
don't you
do
got
it when nobody was home.
right, right.
Anyways, thank you so much.
Definitely.
Does anyone else have anything? Sarah?
Thank you so much, Vance, for sharing your story.
Definitely.
It's always encouraging when people, have the courage to share their story, to share the scars, share the hardship, share, how you navigated out. It really is gold to so many people because so many people are suffering in silence. And so it's so interesting to hear too. You don't hear this too often. Somebody in law enforcement going to yoga and then having something right there in the dispatch center. If I that's really cool. Now I'm curious, for the people that actually participate, do you have any stories? Like have you seen a difference in them or just
You mean
maybe
like as far as students go for
yeah,
me?
yeah.
Actually, yes. I have seen so there's a couple cops that will come on a regular basis and and they'll tell you that they won't miss it. And it's funny because when I'm trying to get more of them in, they so here's the unfortunate part. I guess they have this thought or image of what they think yoga should be, or maybe what they believe it to be. And I try to break a lot of those stereotypes and be like, listen, this is what it's going to be. Now, the ones that do come, I have watched them become incredibly more flexible, be able to balance far more. They'll tell you that their mind is far more calm now. And that's just, if you stick with a steady practice, and that's doing it maybe once a week. Uh, I usually do it a little more than that. Me personally, I mean, I usually try to get in 3 practices a week ish. I try to make myself go to a studio once a week. And I know that sounds like, how do you like have to make yourself? But it's between working a 40 plus hour job, plus teaching, plus volunteering. Sometimes like I run out of time. And, but I really enjoy the community aspect of yoga because at some of my worst times, I would isolate myself from everyone and everything. And it's nice just be around a bunch of people that kind of believe in the same thing and are kind of into the same thing you are. So I like community. I like creating those.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts or comments for Vance?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Again, thanks for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
I think everyone on the call can relate to some, if not all, of your stories. I always tell people when I share my story that our stories are different but similar, and similar but
Mhm.
different. And for the vulnerability part with me, that was a big thing. 21 years in the Army, and I was lucky enough to go to Ranger School as a young corporal, so I had that persona for the rest of my career. And nobody wants to see a Ranger balled up in the fetal position asking for help. So it took many years to ask for that support. And that's another thing too. A lot of us in the first responder, law enforcement, military field, it's what you call things. Because if people want to try tactical breathing, hey, that sounds cool, right? Versus something else that it's called. But my question for you is, have you thought about trying to get the yoga practices early on in your academy, or anything like that, because I know out here in Arizona, Phoenix PD actually has a yoga session taught by a certified trained yoga instructor as part of the recruit training during the academy. Um, to get these young troopers coming in.
I'd love
Um,
it. I'd love
yeah,
it. And I have actually submitted. So we have a regional academy here on Maryland's Eastern Shore. So all the police
right.
officers, other than our state troopers, we all go to the same police academy. So I've already submitted a proposal to them twice
Okay.
that I would do this on a weekly basis for every academy class, and I don't have any headway just yet.
Okay.
And what I will share is West Coast to East Coast. I feel like the West Coast might be a little more progressive where it comes to this
Right.
stuff, and we're still
Yeah, I can
catching
see
up.
that.
So I, all I'm going to say is not yet. It'll come. It's just
Right.
not yet. Uh, and certainly, as different, I thought by this point that different agencies would be like, oh my God, this is great. Come on in here, talk to us
Right.
all about mindfulness, talk to us about like
Yeah,
opening the
absolutely.
body up and stuff like that. But uh, I just think it's just been slower than I thought it would be. But
Yeah.
that'll also
And that's a
teach me to
shame, but
it'll teach me to be patient and manage my expectations.
right. Well, I know a couple yoga instructors that are heavily involved with military and first responders.
Mhm.
Um, so maybe I'll shoot you a connection if we're not
Definitely. Let's
on
do that
LinkedIn.
for sure.
Because they're helping out in that way. And, one of them does virtual sessions for different agencies that she's unable to get to.
I like that.
And it's
I
been working out pretty good.
so I will do Zoom classes for folks. My wife had been after me for months. She was like, "You've got to get
Right.
stuff up on YouTube," which I have started to do. And not all like hour-long practices. There's
Right.
a 30-minute practice, there's a 15-minute practice, there's a couple poses that I put up there. I just started this maybe 4 or 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I am still working on doing that. And I have friends that live on the West Coast they're like, hey, we really want to take a class with you. I'm like, no sweat, we'll just do it through Zoom.
Yep.
We don't have to be in the same room. And there's just so many people out there, especially the people that I really want to teach
Right.
that work shift work and don't live near me. So
Right.
I've got to make a way to make it accessible to them. So that's the whole reason that the YouTube thing. And if they want private classes, I'll certainly do that too. But I'll get
Yeah.
more and more online
Yeah.
content up.
That's great, man. And I know with me just being an old crusty knucklehead, um, I view my vulnerability as my strength now, and it just aids in my resilience. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, listen, I grew up playing a lot of team sports, and I
yep.
especially as football. And then I get into law enforcement where you have this drill instructor just yell and scream at you in your face, and you're not allowed to talk back. So it just
Right.
teaches you, swallow it. You don't say a word.
Absolutely.
And so so coming off football field where you don't want to admit that you're hurt,
Yep.
you get it you get into the police world, and I don't know. I couldn't imagine at the
Yeah.
time being able to be like, hey, there's something wrong with my head.
Yep.
uh Now I am all about, and I am all about like confidential resources.
Yeah.
And if there's something wrong and that there's something wrong, let's have a chat, and
Yeah.
let's have a chat without having to go through like your agency EAP program or going
Yep.
through your insurance right away. Let's just have a talk first, and then
Yeah.
we'll figure out what a good path might be.
Absolutely. And I think that's great that you're out there offering different things, because what may work for me in my journey may not work for Michelle. And if,
Right.
doing
Right.
simple yoga and mindfulness helps, where maybe me, I need to go see a therapist and practice EMDR.
Right.
So the more we have, the more we
Yeah.
help. So I really, really
And I don't
appreciate that.
do one thing. I mean, like
Right.
all right,
Right.
so I will I put it like I'm an open book. Do I go to therapy? Yes. Do I take medicine every day? Yes. Uh I mean, and that's stuff that there was a point in my life where I just was like, shh, don't tell
Yeah.
anybody.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I don't care. But I don't care because
Yeah.
there's probably an awful lot of people out there that should be in therapy, that should be on medicine. So
Yeah.
I do have, I do the yoga component. I really like
Hmm.
Reiki. Uh, all these different things. It's not one thing. And I agree with you. It's not one size fits all. It's everybody's a little different. So
Absolutely.
what works for me might work for you.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about what you're offering. Again, the more we can do, the more we have out there, the more
Yeah.
people we're going to help.
Hey,
That's right.
Vance, I hope you come back. I think this was great, and I
All
think you
right.
have you're very much like-minded like us, and you'd be a good fit. And it was something I was gonna say.
Don't make me
When you
stay
get
up
to a
past my
certain
bedtime.
age, things
Don't make me
go
stay
over
up
your
past my
head.
bedtime every Monday night.
Oh, I sent you a connect link on LinkedIn as well.
Oh, wonderful. I'll check it out in a minute.
Mhm.
Well, and Vance, I just wanted to tack on a little bit of what Daniel was saying too. I love that you're doing the Zoom classes and the offerings through YouTube because I know for one of my biggest things when I went through my darkest moments was not leaving my house. And if
Right.
it wasn't for the power of our story being online, I was not gonna go leave to meet a group of strangers,
Right.
like, let alone, I mean, I wasn't showering, I was taking everything in me just to care for my daughter, who was 3 years old at the time. So, I think that it's so important to recognize that we still need a way to reach these first responders who are suffering. We need a way to reach them when they can't leave their house too. And
Oh,
that's why I love
100%.
that you're pushing that forward.
Definitely. And if you got ideas, shoot them to me.
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely a
Because
group
I'm
full of
because
ideas.
I'm probably gonna say yes.
I love it.
Don't you think he should meet Carrie?
Yes.
We have a friend for you that you haven't met yet.
That
Okay.
is one of the two yoga instructors I was talking about.
Carrie.
Kerry
Okay.
Stewart.
Mhm.
I don't know
He's
her
out
yet.
of he's no longer in Kansas City, is he?
No, I think didn't he move?
His new place is Oklahoma, right?
I think it's
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's just opened up a new place. But he's
Okay.
connecting, I met him through this connection with, the power of our story is really the power of connection. But he helps an organization called Warriors Ascent.
Oh,
And
I don't know that one.
it's a 5-day retreat for military first responders suffering from PTSD.
That's great. I'm writing it
And
down.
yeah, Warriors Ascent. I
Okay.
attended myself.
Oh, even better.
Um, absolutely. And then came home and my lovely wife Melissa saw that, hey, this old crusty guy is changing a little bit. Uh, so she ended up going as well because they have male and female cohorts.
Okay.
Because she's a licensed professional counselor now, but she was also
Oh,
in the military as a military police officer.
I got you.
So yeah, it's a great program. It's for any military first responders, and my cohort. I think we had 18. Crusty old guys, firefighters, medics, military, police. It's and I think that's another part of a journey that we can take as an individual is to get out there and do something like that. And
I agree.
that definitely lead to the vulnerability part, being able to open up and share in a room full of like-minded people with similar experiences in person. And part of that retreat, we did yoga nidra every morning and every
Yeah.
night before we went to bed.
Oh, I love it.
And I
I love
found
it.
that to be one of the best things I learned was
I
was
actually
doing
do.
the yoga nidra.
I actually do that training this upcoming weekend. I'm
Outstanding.
so yeah. So I'm doing
Yeah.
it'll be 2 weekends in February that I'll do those two.
Yeah, so I think that's good. So, and it's not the only one; it's one of many retreats
Yeah,
or
it's great.
self-help programs that are out there. But
I met
like I
a
said,
I met a guy through Facebook, maybe LinkedIn. I think Facebook. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. He runs a group called Cops and Campers, and
yep,
so it's oh my God, what a cool group. And
yeah,
so we just he's like, hey, can we get on a call? So we end up talking. We're talking for like an hour, and he's like, would you come teach yoga at like one of these? I'm like, sure. I mean, I'm no kind of camper. I haven't camped since I was in Boy
right,
Scouts. I'm like, sure, I'll do it. So yeah, I'm gonna go up to New York in Ithaca, New York in like July and
nice.
teach yoga to a bunch of cops.
Yeah, so take a look at Warriors Ascent.
I am. I
it's in
definitely
the
will.
Kansas City,
I definitely will.
Missouri area. They
Okay.
pay for everything.
Okay. It's in Kansas City. Okay.
I put
Yeah.
his name and link into his own personal website too.
Oh, look at that. Even better.
Mhm.
There we go. I'll check them out.
Yeah, check them out. Warriors Ascent. It's a great program.
Cool. Got it. What other questions can I answer for y'all? Anything?
I just think it's great that you did this. Anytime somebody has the courage to do something new, to kind of stick their neck out, try something new. Because I can imagine, somebody deciding to do yoga in the dispatch center or, law enforcement. I mean, that takes courage.
I
Yep.
know.
I'm
I
not a
know.
first responder, but I mean, right, guys? Do you think that would be?
Yeah,
No,
listen, and there was
I think it's great.
a time that I would have I don't know, there's a time that I would view it and be like, I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to do I'm supposed to look different. I'm supposed to be different.
Yep.
And I don't know, there's just something that kind of happened that I'm like, I don't care anymore. I'm gonna do what's right for me. And away we go. And now I just want to share that with other people.
100%. I think we all have to be individuals. We all have
Absolutely.
different.
You added something to the skill set or to the resource list for all first responders. You're taking that step because I don't know of another law enforcement officer or dispatcher who's doing yoga. I mean,
Oh.
Carrie the veteran is, but
Okay.
I mean, maybe there. I'd have to think about it. I don't know if you guys
There's
have.
a couple of us
There's a
out there in
couple
the
out
world,
there.
but
Yeah.
it's not
Okay.
there's not a lot. And
There's
so
not a lot.
any of the ones that I've found, either through LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, or speaking at conferences, I usually reach out to them. And just because look, there's not a lot of us. So if there's a way we can support one another,
Exactly.
that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna wrap up our recording, but feel
Okay.
free to hang out online afterwards with us. So thank you again, Vance,
For
and
sure.
hopefully you'll be able to join us again.
All right. Deal.